He's got the best intros, honestly. He needs to follow me around more. It's great. All right, so this presentation is pretty much about one thing, so I thought I'd start by just asking this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you know your customers, what they're doing? So, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, I think we had a customer once, 10 being, I know what each and every one of my customers had for breakfast this morning. Show me on your fingers how much you know about your customers from 1 to 10, 1 to nothing, 10 to everything. Go. You guys don't know anything. It's fine. Oh, not bad. 6. Okay. All right. Good. Pretty good. Okay. So there's some work that can be done. So over there, you guys know everything. What are you doing? Good. Well, that's great. So this presentation is literally about that question. If you know more about what your customers are doing and you can apply it in every part of your business, what can you do? I'm not standing in the right place, am I? I'm sorry. So, let's start by looking at some of the industry, what people are saying. So we've got the professional side of things, where outsell are telling us we need to move to a solution selling model. You need to know something about your customers if you want to sell them a solution, or else it's not relevant to them, so that's actually helpful. Then we've got the professional side of the industry, where we're being shown that you need to know nothing about your customer to serve them an ad, necessarily. You just send them to an ad platform and hope it's relevant. That might make sense, or it may not. Perhaps it's just kind of wasted money. And then there's the content side of things. Turns out at the Sundance Film Festival, the biggest buyers of the films and content was Amazon and Netflix. Who'd have thought? Netflix come out with a new series they've created on their own fairly regularly now. So the old traditional companies don't have a lock on content creation anymore. It's moving into a new way. So what does this mean for the media industry itself? What should we be doing? Well, in the best traditions of making other people do my presentation for me, let's turn to Gene Bishop, who is the VP of Technology at ALM, which is a law publisher in the States. And he was on a panel recently, and he said something fairly interesting. And that was, content is everywhere, and advertisers can find audiences on their own. Oh dear. We needed any more. But this is actually interesting for the next step, because it means, who is now the most important person on the internet? It's the answer to the question, who's got 2 thumbs and is the most important person on the internet? This guy. It's you. You are now the most important people on the internet, because what they are trying to get to is you, and they want to make it relevant. If the advert you're seeing is not relevant, you don't care about it, right? You don't see it. So, how do we do this? What are we doing? This is how I see our business. This is the workflow. This is what we do every day, right? This is how we create content. This is how we deliver this information to our customers. So, what do we know about our customers? And what do we know about what they're doing? Well, a lot of us, I've done this myself, we create a report about how many articles have been clicked on. Okay, that's interesting. But we need to think about that more in terms right back at the start of all parts of this content lifecycle. So we plan the data we're going to create. We do lots and lots of meetings about what we're going to create, right? Because that's what we think is valuable. We create it in the editorial section. So we create it properly. We create it with as much attention to detail as we can, so we think it's valuable. In production, we change layouts, we enrich it. We've had conversations about enrichment previously. We tag it so it's going to work well for our customers. We then distribute it to our partners, and we even, if we can, and if we have time, think about the customer experience. And that, to monitor that, is where that report comes in. But it's not really enough, because if we know more about what our customers are actually doing about with our content, if we know more about what they do every day, where they work, how they want to work, we can use that and we can feed it back in to every part of this life cycle. And then the things you can do are incredible. So we can change the experience they have with the content that you're creating. We can change who gets the content. Be better if only the people that are relevant for the set of content we're creating get to know about it, right? Because they will immediately use it, and you won't get accused of spamming everyone a lot. In terms of production, we can make sure that the content we create is more relevant for the people we are pushing it out to. And we can look at the impact that the content we are creating is, whether it's worth it or whether it's not. And that changes what we plan to do in the future as well. Let's make really good stuff, guys, and let's give it to the people who really want it in the way that they want it. And we do that by understanding how our customers work. If we don't have it, that's kind of hard. So let's make someone else do my presentation again. We've got Keith here, who is the Director of Strategy for Technology at Channel 4. And he defined the situation we're all in an interesting way. He said, it's like being in a submarine with no sonar. Now, I spared absolutely no expense for this presentation, and so I've visualized this for you. Oh yeah. There we are, all in our information industry submarine. Notice we're all in the same boat. And, sorry. And without this information about what our customers are doing, it's like we are deaf and blind. It's really hard to make a submarine blind, as it turns out, but deaf works. We don't know what we're doing, we don't know where we're going. So let's change that. Let's come back to this workflow, this way of working. What content do we actually have? What data do we have that we can start using? We've got our content, obviously. These are the articles, the books, the journals that we create, that we can use, that we spend all of our time and money putting in there. There's the metadata. When we look at the content we've actually got, what is it about? Let's make it visible, let's make it relevant, let's tag it properly. We've got the taxonomies. You just had a great presentation on that, how important those are, once we've figured out what taxonomies means. But that means we know where it fits in across all the different systems that we've got, which is important. And then we can tie it all together with semantics. So we know how it all links in together. There's a lot of work here that needs to go on to actually get this. But we're missing an important part. And if we can make use of all of that in combination with actual customer data, we can change the picture significantly. And that's how we shift our thinking. Now that's quite a lot of data we've got, right? We generate a lot in that workflow, but things actually are changing. Now previously you could look at the success of a company by what revenue it made this year, how many content products it brought to market, but there's kind of a shift happening where people want to start tracking how good companies are by how Shelley Palmer defined it, an industry specialist, saying whether you got your data rich or your data poor, the companies who have the best ability to actually make use of this content, turn it into action, are the ones that are going to be successful, the ones that are going to win. Okay, interesting. The ones that are leading, who are they? Netflix, it's Amazon, it's Google, and what are they tracking specifically and why? Well, they are tracking customers. They are tracking what they are doing, and they're tracking everything. They want to know where you live. They want to know where you work. They want to know who your friends are. They want to know what you buy. They want to know how much you're worth and what your value is and where you buy it, as it turns out. Because this helps them link what they are producing to you directly, and that makes it valuable. Of course, within privacy concerns. So we come back to this demonstration of our business again. We need to shift that tracking of our customers from that Excel report that happens at the end of every quarter to say how valuable was this article or how many people bought this book into something different. We need to make that information a core part of the data that we have. Now, that's all very nice, but that's not the end. The next step is to integrate it into the rest of the data, and that gives context. So it's not just information about who's buying what, it's why are they buying it. It's the context they're consuming this data in that makes it really, really cool. All right, so can I back this up? Yes, as it turns out. A great example of this is Saturday Night Live. Who's heard of Saturday Night Live in the States? At least 4 or 5 of you. Excellent, there's probably more of you, all right. Saturday Night Live, comedy show, satirical in the States. Been going for 40 years last year, as it turns out. So they wanted to do something a little bit different with putting their videos online, which they've kind of already done. People can search for them and see them. But we, in the age of millennials, as David pointed out so well this morning, we consume content in a different way. Nowadays, we're in the world of Tinder, swipe left, swipe right, I don't like this, I do like this. It's Twitter, it's short, sharp, and if you're talking about Trump, pretty pointless tweets that are there and then they disappeared. So they used and they worked on the data that they had to do things differently. They utilized the content, and stuff from 40 years ago wasn't marked up very well, as you might imagine. Its metadata wasn't that great, so they worked on it with the idea that they wanted their customers to use this in a different way. They created the taxonomies to help define where these videos sat using this metadata. And then, using semantics, they created a recommendation engine so that their customers would only see the stuff, would then teach the system to show them stuff that they liked, that they wanted. And it worked really, really well. So when you open the app, you actually just get chucked straight into a video. You don't get to search or choose. Well, you can, but it's the next screen. First thing you do is shows you a video, and you go, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't like that. Every time that happens, information goes back into the system, it's tracking what you're doing, and next time it will show you something that's more relevant. And there are some great tweets and feedback from customers saying, I got stuck in the SNL40 hole for 3 days. I couldn't come out because it was so funny. I'm really hungry. Because it worked. It was really relevant for each individual customer or consumer who was using this product. And it made an incredibly engaging system. Pretty cool. And on the content that they already had, just because they started to understand what their customer wanted, which is a simple example. So let's take a different example. This is Mitchell 1, and they are publishers. They publish repair manuals for cars. You can see an example of this, the repair manual just here. You can see that it's turned into a pretty significant doorstop. So much so they don't bother doing it anymore. It's not worth it. They're not making any money on it. Sending that out is, great for doorstops, I guess, or maybe kindling. So they've moved stuff online. So now the applications are online, helping mechanics be more efficient and more effective. But they found the more they worked on understanding how their customers, who are mechanics, who are automotive industry, people in their supply chain, they could help out everyone at each point in their supply chain. So it's not just automotive manuals they're creating and these applications. They've actually gone to scheduling. So they can do applications to help customers know when they should get things repaired and help garages say, you guys need to come and get repaired sooner rather than later. They're at the tools. So they're Mitchell are part of Snap-on Tools. Most of their stuff is now digital. So let's create new tools to help mechanics be more efficient. Parts is more ridiculous than I ever thought it could be. Each one of those parts probably comes from a different supplier with different standards in different places and different locations with God knows how many ways of producing these things. And just simply figuring out which parts your car needs at the same time from different suppliers is more of a problem than I honestly had thought about before. But there's also the actual mechanics who do the repairs. How can they be more efficient? Even billing, I even run billing now from the same system. Now with this, they added in and they linked all this stuff together, and then they asked mechanics and experts to add in tips and advice all into the same system so that they can actually have the voice of the customer built in. You can see that there's a pattern here. They're using the customer and what they want to do to make it much more relevant. This was their slide from our conference, Biologic World, and how they defined what they were doing. All of that data was in different silos, in different places all around the world. And they used Smart Logic to put it all into a single silo because it was able to do the semantics and the taxonomy and the actual content and the metadata all in the same place. And they ended up with, not literally, but something similar to that picture on your left, I assume. And out of that came some really, really cool applications. The first one being, wouldn't it be great if I could walk up to a mechanic and say, I've heard a knocking sound at the back of my car,
and it sounds a bit like this, and it drives left all the time, and I think the wheels fallen off or something. And the mechanic puts it into an application, and it says, this is what you should do. This was the application they were trying to create. And it's based on each customer personally. It knows that that customer has had this many things replaced last week. They came from these suppliers, it's been driven in this location for this long by this style of driver, perhaps it's this old. And therefore the recommendation based on the symptoms that you've described is these replacement parts from these suppliers, click here to order, they'll be here next Tuesday. That's pretty cool. Everyone's getting value from that, from the customer right back to the mechanic that's able to understand that this is the right thing to actually do. And it uses all of the data on their supply chain from the start to the finish. Let's turn to another example. ALM, I've used them before. They're a law publishing company and out there in the States. Their business model is subscriptions, a mix of subscriptions and ad revenue on their website. And what they've been doing so far, they've had such success with, they're actually moving into a couple of new verticals now, tax and some other things, because they're starting to understand what their customers want and they're being successful with it. So our friend Gene, again, going back to the idea that content is everywhere and advertisers can already reach their audiences, what is it we can actually do with the data that we've got to make us more relevant? Well, we invest in our customer. This is now their view of the customer. Previously, it was, yep, that guy, probably interested in these articles, and that's about it. Now, they know a lot more. They've included the usual stuff, which, you know, this person, here's how they registered, but also stuff from LinkedIn, their social profiles, their employment, where they were, where they've been educated, what they're actually working in now, stuff they've created, and linkages to what they've consumed. And they had to put a lot of work into actually figuring out all of the information that they had and how that related to the industry, because they had to understand where those articles were sitting in their own taxonomy and how they were relevant and how that actually makes sense to who this person actually is. So they actually even looked at judges and a whole bunch of other people to figure out what it is they've actually done in the past and what their main area of concern is. And this is what the system looks like. So you can see my logic in the middle and all the data sources on the left. They started with what they thought was 10 data sources. Right, it'll be easy, 10, right? No problem. 60 plus in the end, because every time they looked at the value they wanted to get from their end applications, they said, well, we need that piece of information over there. Usefully, it's not too hard in my logic, you can just stick it straight in. And they used simple MDM processes. There was quite a lot of work here, but they were able to do it inside the system to do the deduplication and the mapping and all that sort of thing to get to the point where they could now do what? Tracking their customer. So adding into that, with that 360-degree view, they are tracking the customer to say who are located here, where they work, what they've produced, what they're doing, as you just saw with that customer 360. And it affects all of their customers from the start to the end. And an example is email marketing campaign. Very simple example, right? It's close to all of our hearts. We've all done this. Let's see if we can make it better. So how would we do it? They were looking at sending out an email to people for this conference in New York about reputational risk, I think, which was, okay, so they went through their customer list. Who's vaguely relevant? Who would be interested in this? Let's send them an email. Sure, they'll all come. Isn't that great? 21,000 emails. Oh, wrong button. 21,000 emails sent, 52 leads. That's not a bad click-through rate, to be fair, 0.24%, right? Seen that before, not bad. Open rate is 15%, good, okay. So they wanted to test us, to test the system they built. Let's create a fingerprint from the information we have, this customer 360, and let's see who's really relevant for this. Let's filter that list. And it came down to 4,000-ish people. There were some people freaking out at this point going, oh, no one's coming. This isn't going to work. But the click-through rate went up, the open rate went up, and the leads increased slightly, even though we mailed 4,000 people rather than 22. If you look at the email sends per click, That's a 600% more effective rate. And we didn't even mail as many people. Because we mailed the right people with the right information, we knew who we were sending the information to. And it worked. People were happy about that. So, what are we trying to do? This is the last time I show this workflow, I promise. But we need to shift this thinking of our customers, not from the report at the end of the life cycle, but moving it into a core component of the data that we track and that we use. This is the most important thing we can do because it affects all of the other parts of our data. And when you start having something that looks like this, our entire infrastructure looks different because you can apply all of that information at any part of this life cycle, which can be tremendously effective, as I've hopefully shown with some of those examples. This changes what we were saying about data rich or data poor. Maybe it's not about either of those things. Maybe it's just that you have rich data, because that's actually the value of your content. If you have rich data, you can be successful. So, here we all are in our information submarine, but now we've got sonar. We understand what's coming up. We understand something about the pitfalls. We understand the competition. We understand who's out there. We can hear what's going on, hopefully what's coming. And given this information, which is unique in the media industry, understanding something about our customers is what is going to make us successful into the future. Thank you.